Yes, hi. Good morning, everyone. So before we begin, I will again remind you to mute yourselves and disable your videos to optimize audio and visual quality for everybody. Before I pass on the presentation to Michael, allow me to do the needful, which is to introduce him. Michael Gramlich is an instructor and freelance consultant for data science, machine learning, and data strategy. Before that, he worked as a data scientist at Alexander Thumb GmbH Consulting for multinational corporations across Europe. He is passionate about implementing data science and machine learning projects end to end, from the conception until deployment of operational data products that generate real value. Michael loves sharing his expertise and experience with data, which he has done in many trainings for various international companies and universities. He holds a master's degree in international economics from the Graduate Institute of Geneva. So very excited for this session because we're kind of pivoting to a more practical one after covering basic concepts in machine learning, AI, digital transformation. So with that, pass on the presentation to you. Keep your questions coming and I'll pick, hopefully we can cover most of them at the end of the segment. So Michael, over to you.
All right, perfect. Then thank you again for the introduction, Edison. As always, I think you've said it all. If you would like to have more information about me, just feel free to visit my website. And do not forget to also connect with me on LinkedIn. Okay, right off the bat, I am too learning and improving, hopefully with the webinars. So today I'm actually using two screens, which allows me to have a bit more features. So don't be confused if I sometimes look in this direction, because this is where I have my big screen. Just as a side note. Good. Then let's get started. Let's first recap what we have done so far. So remember that we had 3 webinars so far. The first one was about digital transformation and big data. And the main story there was that we have this thing going on, which is called digital transformation, and it's causing a lot of disruption across basically every industry across the globe. And while this was initially being driven by digitalization, so digitalizing business processes, it is increasingly being driven by data and everything you can do with data. And this is basically what we talked about in webinar 2 and 3, namely all the things you can do with data. So we had a look at data analytics, and remember that there's different types of data analytics: descriptive, diagnostic, predictive, and prescriptive. Some of these data analytics types harness data visualizations, others use statistical methods mostly, and the more advanced ones, so the more advanced analytics use cases leverage machine learning and AI, which is basically what we looked at last week. So remember that machine learning is basically, or put differently, AI is basically nothing else than machine learning today, because it's the most successful approach to create AI systems. And the idea of machine learning is really that you create a computer program that you don't have to explicitly program, but instead what you do is you simply define a task you want the machine to learn, and you give it historic data, and the machine is going to learn from this data by itself. Good. So if I've done my job right, basically we have covered quite some ground already. And if I did my job right, then you should have an idea of all of these things. Okay, you should roughly know what digital transformation is, what big data is, what types of data there are, what data analytics is, what kinds of job roles there are in data analytics and in this world also, what the cloud is, what machine learning is, and how these things are connected and how they work. So we should have covered quite a few of the learning objectives of this series. And basically the last 3 webinars conclude this, let me call it, answering the questions why things matter and what things are. And today and next week, we're really switching to how you can do this and how you can leverage these things that you learned about by yourself. So concretely, what we want to look at today is the entire topic of data strategy. And specifically, I would like to first give you an introduction of what a data strategy is and maybe also what it is not. And then what we're going to do is we're going to start developing your own data strategy and identify and ideate data use cases. Now, typically, I would have this session in person, but by now I'm pretty used to giving webinars. But B, I'm typically having this session with one company, and we have this in sort of a workshop format. Now, because we're so many people, we can't do it, and so we're switching to this format. But I still do hope that you get enough input so that you can do your homework to develop your own data strategy. And so the learning objectives of today are: learn what a data strategy is. You will discover and you'll get to know a framework to develop your own data strategy. And ideally, you should get to know a few ideation methods to identify data use cases. Good. Then without further ado, let me get right into it. And let's first look at data strategy and what it is. Always start at the end before you begin, is a quote by Robert Kiyosaki, which whom some of you might know. He has written excellent books about basically personal finance. And hang on, good. So yeah, what is a data strategy, to get this out of the way directly? So if you look this term up, you might land at a Wikipedia page which says that data strategy is a set of choices and decisions that together chart a high-level course of action to achieve high-level goals. I think this is super blah blah and super academic definitions that are probably of little use to the average person like you and me. So for me, really, when we talk about a data strategy, what I mean with it is that it's nothing else than having a strategy to identify how you can use data in your organization to help you achieve your business goals. Okay, that's it. So it's basically simply seeing how you can use data to achieve your goals. Now, the way I like to think about this, and I think that is a way that also might help you, is that think about how computers and the internet changed the rules of the game for most of the businesses around the world, right? So in the 1980s, starting from the 1980s, we suddenly had computers, which was a big innovation. And then all of the businesses were faced with somehow transitioning and using computers in their business. And the ones who didn't were probably gone at some point. Then starting from the 1990s, we have the same thing, but with the internet, right? So suddenly there's this huge innovation which offers so many new possibilities that companies also had to start including this in their business processes, both internally, but also in their interaction with their customers. And probably the companies who didn't embrace the internet were doomed to fail. The computer, both the computer and the internet, are often referred to as so-called general purpose technologies. And a general purpose technology is an innovation or a thing or a technology that is so large in its magnitude and has so much effect on economy, on society and politics that it changes all of these areas essentially. So apart from computer and internet, probably the car was one. And really data and everything you can do with data, so data analytics, machine learning, AI, is actually just another general purpose technology that we're living through right now. And so maybe 30 years ago, there was someone like me giving workshops on how to best use computers in your business. And maybe 20 years ago, there was someone like me who was giving workshops on how to use the internet for your business. But really, what we want to look at today in data strategy just means, okay, there's this thing called data and everything that you can do with it. How is it going to affect your area of business and how can you use data in your company? Good. So data and all the things you can do with it, I like to distinguish and I like to differentiate and classify it into two things you can do with it. One is you can create what I call old money, and the other one is what I call new money. And basically, Old money means simply making your existing business model and your existing business better. So you might make your products, you might produce your products or services cheaper. You might increase your outreach and sales. You might save costs through automatization. You might become more efficient as a company and make better decisions by being more data driven. So these are all things that are basically just improving what you already have. That's why I like to call it old money. Now, there is also new money, which is basically based on data, create new data products or augment existing services and products with data analytics and AI components. So you create new revenue streams with data and everything you can do with it. So yeah, basically tapping, augmenting new revenue streams. To give you an example, old money would be, for instance, if you implement the use case, creating a sales dashboard, which will hopefully give you the information and the ability to make better decisions in terms of who you sell to, what you sell to, maybe increase your sales at the end of the day. Already super powerful. New money, an example would be, I don't know if we talked about this in the last webinars, but in my old company, I worked together with a Swiss company which is producing kitchen equipment. And one of the things they produce is these mixes. And their old business model, their normal business model was simply to produce and sell these mixes. And what they did is basically they had a few data use cases which fell under the category new money at some point. And what they did is they equipped their mixers with sensors, and these sensors collected data on how their users used the device. So what they cooked, when they cooked, what sort of recipes they used, etc. This data was sent or is sent now to a data lake, so a database of this company, where it's analyzed and users can now download an app about their device to, of course, get statistics on how they use it, but also, more importantly, based on how they use it, get recommendations for new recipes. So what the company is doing is it's going to analyze the data and it's going to say, hey, we realized you are cooking a lot of desserts recently. How about buying our new cookbook on the trending desserts in the summer 2020 for only $5 or €5? So essentially, they are implementing data use cases which directly represent a new revenue stream for the company. And this is what I mean with new money. Now, when we define your data strategy today and when we identify use cases that fall under old and new money, really both are good as long as they help you achieve your goals. And one is not better than the other. Good. So this shall already have been it in terms of what is a data strategy. So this was the theoretical part. What I'd like to do now is basically getting into defining your data strategy. And the way we're going to do it is we're going to follow 3 steps. Hang on. Okay. So how can you develop your data strategy? The way I like to go about this is to go into 3 steps. And the first one is define your business goals. One of the ways I'm improving today is that because I'm having 2 screens, I can use this fancy marker. So I hope that augments the quality of it. This might sound very trivial to most of you, but we'll see that it often is actually where a lot of companies are quite stuck already. And the idea is that we have to define your mission and your business goals, because at the end of the day, data should really just be considered as one of your assets, right? Remember from webinar 1 that data is nothing else than an asset that you can use to achieve your goals. But in order to see where we want to go with data, we first must define the goals and the direction. Now, the second thing is once we have our goals straight, we will try to identify data use cases. And I think that's where last week there were a lot of questions. I remember one person asking about how to identify that. So we'll go about this and I'll give you a few tools and brainstorming methods to come up with your own data use cases. And the third thing will be that and I don't know if we're going to get to this today, depends a bit on the time, and we might also drag that to next week, is to, based on your use cases that you identify, and derive an actionable roadmap on how you can start using data in your company. Good. Now, let's talk about your goals and let's talk about your mission. And some of you might be familiar with the book by Simon Sinek, which is called Start With Why, which is basically a business book. And the main idea is that to grow your business and to sort of find or define your business, you should always start with why. And the reason for that is because everything you do in your business, every decision you take, should at the end of the day be aligned with your overall mission or overall goal. And if you have this goal very clearly defined, it should be really crystal clear, then you shouldn't, ideally, and when you run your business, run into situations where you have doubts or where you don't know how to take a decision. Okay? Typically, you run into doubts, and let's say you build your website and you don't know what color to choose or how to set up your website or what content to include. Typically, this is the case if you don't have your why specified, because from your why, from your mission, from your overall anchor, all of the answers typically follow. And the why should be distinguished from the what and how. And we'll see, let me give you an example of why the why is very important, especially also when you talk to your customers or your clients. I don't know if you have this in other languages, but in German, there's this little story that we sometimes tell about a stone cutter. Let's just take a construction worker at this point. And someone is taking a walk and he's seeing 3 stone cutters or construction workers on the street while he's taking a walk. And he wants to know what the purpose of life is and what they're doing and what they're up to, essentially. And he's asking all 3 of them what they're doing. And the first one says, hey, wanderer, can't you see that I'm just putting 1 stone on another? Which is basically what a construction worker does in terms of the how. This is how he does things, right? Putting 1 stone on another. He asks the second person and he says, hey, wanderer, can't you see I'm building a house? And so this is what construction workers do, right? At the end of the day, they build a building or build a house. The way they do that is by putting stone on stone. Then the wanderer goes on to ask the third construction worker, and the construction worker says, dear wanderer, can't you see I'm fulfilling dreams? Right? Now, if you are a construction company, you might say, and you might address your clients by saying, hey, we are here to put stone on stone. This is obviously not very strong. You might also say, you might refer to your what and say, hey, we're building a house for you, which is already a stronger message, sort of. But really, the idea behind Start With Why is what people care about is problems and dreams, desires, emotional things. And so if as a construction worker or construction company you say, we're fulfilling your dreams of your own home, right? We're making the dreams of families who are craving their home come true. Then you're addressing to their why, and typically this is the strongest. And if you have this why, then can be used, or you should use this in your communication with your clients, but it should also help you stir your business internally. Let me give you an example of how this would look like for me. Hang on. Okay. So basically what I do at the end of the day, if an alien watched me through outer space and looked at me, I'm doing nothing else than to stare into a laptop for 10 hours a day, right? This is not very purposeful. It's not inspiring, neither for me nor for my clients. And so if I tell someone, hey, I'm staring into a laptop 10 hours a day, do you want to buy my services? Obviously this is not very strong. Now, if I move one level up, I could say to my clients, and I could tell myself when I get out of bed in the morning, I'm giving webinars. Do you want to buy one? Or when I get up in the morning, I could say, oh, great, I'm giving webinars today again, which was already somewhat stronger, but also not really very purposeful. Now, if I drill down to my why, which is to, at the end of the day, help organizations gain clarity in the buzzword jungle of data and AI, then this is a reason for me to stand up in the morning and to get out of bed in the morning. And it's also a reason for customers and clients to buy from me. So my marketing would probably be much more effective if I say, I'm helping you getting rid of your confusion about data, analytics, and AI, rather than, hey, let me stare into a laptop for a 1 hour a day with you. So yeah, one of the main things in marketing, one of the main sayings is that people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. So your why is really important. Also, when we think about your data strategy. Okay, good. This is sort of a prerequisite before we start. So I hope that some of you already start thinking about it, and some of you might already have your why very clearly figured out in terms of your mission statement. If you haven't, then it's a good idea to start thinking about it. This was the first prerequisite we need. The second prerequisite we need, and this is also where a lot of companies have some sort of an idea but haven't really, nailed it down accurately, is to define your target persona. Now, the target persona, for those of you who aren't aware of it, is basically the most important step or the most important concept in marketing. And the idea is that you create a profile of your dream customer, and you really try to make this specific. So do write down everything you would know about your customer in terms of give him or her a name, an age, and nationality, where do they live, and really try to be empathetic and put yourself in the shoes of your dream customers that you would like to address. Okay, so this is referring to their personal life, their professional life, what kind of education they have, what kind of job they have, are they married, are they single, what is their political affiliation, how do they spend their day, what is their behavior, what is their character. So yeah, really try to be very specific and nail down your target customer. For those of you who haven't done that yet, you can do this, you can have a few customer or target persona profiles. And because, I don't know, if you're selling tea or if you're selling tourism tours, safari tours, you might appeal to more than one, let's say, customer profile. So it's perfectly fine to have a few profiles. But at the end of the day, the purpose of this exercise of creating a target persona is to really nail down what your customer looks like. And the idea of being so specific and giving them a name and an age is to really force you to be very concrete and specific. Now, the most important part of defining your target persona is this guy right here. Okay? The most important part is you should identify what their underlying problem or desire or wish or craving is. And sometimes that the persons aren't really aware of these concretely. But essentially, this problem should be your why, okay? Their problem should be your mission statement, okay? In my case, this means I guess most of the people who are here have heard about AI, have heard about machine learning, have heard about data. Some might be a little scared of it, some might be a little overwhelmed, some might know roughly what it is. I hope now more than 3 weeks ago. But basically your underlying problem was maybe confusion, or your desire was to gain clarity. Maybe your desire was to gain competitive edge. Basically all of the problems or the reason why you're here should basically correspond to my why. And for your companies and your clients, it should be the same. This is, I think, in my opinion, a bit easier if you're a B2C, so if you're directly targeting end customers, but it is also possible to do it if you're in the business to business sector. What I do recommend if you are in the B2B sector is that you actually at least create 2 target persona profiles, namely one target persona profile of the company. So instead of having a person here in the middle, you should have an icon of a company and then not have the name and the age of the company, but maybe its size and its industry. And you should have a second target persona, which is basically the person in that company, in your target persona company, who is making the decision to buy from you. So if you're a consultant or if you're selling products to another company, you have to understand how the person who's making the decision within that company is ticking so that you can target and market everything you do in your business around that. Good. Okay, so these are the 2 prerequisites. One is figure out your why. And the second one is define your target persona. And if everything aligns perfectly, then the why you have identified should be exactly the problem or the desire of your target persona. Good. These 2 things are necessary to develop your data strategy. And the way you can do that is by using the data strategy canvas, which Edison, we need to talk afterwards, but I'll make this available to everyone. So everyone signed up should get a link. I guess, Edison, that will be the easiest way to download PowerPoint templates for this. So the data strategy canvas essentially follows what we just talked about. The first thing you should do is write down your mission. And so this is your why, and it should be crystal clearly formulated because everything that comes afterwards will be derived from that. Okay, so it should basically, one teaser to get you going is basically if you complete the sentence, we as a company exist in order to fill the blank, this should basically be your mission. Okay, so for instance, for SheTrades, their mission, their overall or underlying why is we want to empower female entrepreneurs, which by the way is a super powerful mission and a super powerful why, which is very good to market. Good. If you have your mission, the next step will be to define and derive your goals. Okay. And an important point to make here is the distinction between a mission or a dream or a vision and a goal, because they are very, very different. A mission or a dream would be is if I say I want to become rich or I want to be famous. Goals are concrete. So if I say I want to be rich, this is my mission, and a goal would be that I want to in 2020 earn $1 million or 1 million euros. So the difference between mission and goals are that goals should be SMART, and SMART stands for specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and time-bound. So as opposed to your mission, this should really be something you can measure and where you at some point can say, hey, I've achieved my goals. Because, you know, saying rich is saying I want to be rich is quite relative and it's difficult to say when you're done. Whereas goals, if you make them measurable and time-bound, you can say, hey, I have achieved my goals in a certain time. Let's look at an example to make things a bit clearer. So a data strategy, this is the canvas basically filled out for myself. And my mission is to help organizations gain clarity in the buzzword jungle of data and AI. And I can break this mission down into different goals. And if I achieve all of these goals, then basically I'm manifesting my mission or vision. So I could say that I have 2 goals in the area of sales. One of them is to give trainings to 100 companies in 2020, and I currently have given trainings to 35. So I'm still off of my goals by 65%. A second goal would be, or could be, to create 5 online courses and sell each of them more than 1,000 times. I currently have created 0 online courses because there's too many things getting into my way. A third goal in the area of marketing might be have 1,000 website visitors per month. I currently have maybe around 60. Another goal I have is to hire 2 virtual assistants and I currently only have one. Now, if you haven't defined your mission and your goals, then your first homework is going to be to nail that down, and to do that regularly, at least once a year. One thing you can do is, for instance, set goals for the rest of your year. And if you do sit down and think about it, I'm sure there's tons of other goals. So these are 4 goals of me, but actually I'm sure I can identify at least 5, 10, or maybe 20 more if I go into all the areas of my business. Good. So step 1, mission. Step 2, goals. And once you have your goals laid out very clearly in a smart way, so specific, measurable, time-bound, actionable, hopefully this will already be helpful for your business. This is strategy of your business in general. Now let's pivot this towards data. The idea of a data strategy is to identify use cases like we've looked at the last 2 weeks. So a data use case is a problem or a situation where you can use data to help you achieve your goals. And these data use cases should help you contribute or should help you achieve a certain goal. And in that, do remember that data is nothing else than another asset of your company, right? So to achieve your goals, you will have also human resources, so yourself and your staff, which is probably the most important asset you have. You might have external consultants. You will most likely have computers. You will have your website. You will have maybe some other technology or software you use, maybe partners, maybe API, you name it. You'll have tons of assets that you have to achieve your goals. Now, what I want you to do in your mind is to think about data as just another asset and add this as an asset to your list. Good. So this is basically the data strategy framework canvas, let's say. And as you see, I've also structured this into, again, why, what, and how, okay? So your why is the most important thing, your mission, try to break it down into what you actually want to achieve. If you're a tourism company and your mission is to not sell tours, but to fulfill dreams, right? If you're an agribusiness industry, your mission could be something like, I'm not selling tea, I'm making people healthy. Or if you are an IT company, you shouldn't sell software, you should make other companies more efficient. Or if you're in textile, you're not selling t-shirts, but you're selling lifestyles, ecological lifestyles or something like this. Once you have that, try to break down your mission into the what's. So what are you actually trying to achieve in terms of sales, in terms of marketing, in terms of internal things, in terms of your website. And what we're going to look at now is, once you have that, how can we help you achieve these things with data? Good. Right, so we will be talking about identifying data use cases. And this is a data strategy workshop. So we'll be specifically looking at data use cases. Now, often, or most of the times when I give this workshop, you know, people sort of take a step back of their daily operations and they reevaluate their business and they identify many more problems and many more solutions which have nothing to do with data, and that is fine, right? When we now go into the ideation of how you can identify data use cases, you'll probably also find problems that have solutions which have nothing to do with data. You might find solutions that use data but don't really solve a problem that you might have. And you'll also run into problems with no solutions, but for which we would have data, right? And all of these things are great, and I encourage you to also record this and take this out of your brainstorming. But ideally, the data strategy is about finding those problems that have solutions which are built on data. And hopefully in the past 3 weeks, you've gotten a sense why such solutions can be so powerful. Good. So yes, before we get into brainstorming use cases, this is my data strategy canvas continued as an example. So I've done this for myself already, and I've looked at only goal 2 at this point. So have 1,000 website visitors per month. Now I have done a bit of brainstorming for myself, and I have identified a few data use cases. For instance, one data use case is to start tracking the Google ranking for crucial keywords. Oliver, I have a question here. What does status quo mean? Status quo is what the situation is currently, what the situation is at the moment. So my goal is to have 1,000 visitors, and currently I have 60 per month. Good. So one use case is to track my Google rankings for crucial keywords. And one crucial keyword for me is, for instance, data strategy workshop. So whenever someone types this into Google, I would like to appear on the top of the search results. Now, one data use case would be to check every day for this keyword, how am I ranking? Am I on position 1 or am I on position 50? What page am I on, etc. So that's already one use case. And a second use case you can do, which is related to it, is I could do something which is called SEO, so search engine optimization. And search engine optimization refers to the idea of building your website such that you appear high on the rankings for Google searches for possibly a lot of keywords. So there's a million things you can do to improve your Google ranking results. For instance, you could write a blog article. I could write a blog article which is called content marketing. So I could write a blog article about, let's say, data strategy workshop. And what I would see ideally, once I've published this blog article on my website, is that my rankings, my Google rankings for the keyword data strategy workshop improve. So a second use case would be implement a few SEO measures and track and actually analyze if it has an effect on my rankings, right? And there's a third use case involved here, which is to implement SEO measures in the first place. A fourth data use case that would help me achieve these 1,000 visitors is to, in the first place, understand how visitors arrive on my website. Do they come via organic search from Google, or do they come through referral? Do they come from LinkedIn? Do they come from an interview I gave on a website for a newspaper article? How do they come to my website in the first place? This will already help me understand my website and how people come to it, and how then according to that I have to adjust my strategy to get 1,000 visitors. Now these 4 were all examples of data use cases, okay? And as I said, not everything has to have to do with data. If I want to achieve the goal of giving trainings to 100 companies in 2020, I might as well just say, hey, let me do a LinkedIn post about my courses as an advertisement and hopefully gain new customers through that. So in it by itself, this has nothing to do with data, and this would be an example of a non-data use case, let's say. Just to be clear that our goal is to identify these guys, but if during the brainstorming you come across non-data use cases, that's also fine. Whatever floats your boat to achieve your goals. Good. So we've seen what a data strategy is. Hang on, I need to push this. We've just talked about the fundamental thing to derive your data strategy, which is to define your mission and derive your goals. And what I want to do now is to give you a framework or a few methods to help you ideate and identify data use cases for yourself. Okay, so how can you identify data use cases? Hopefully by now, from the last 3 webinars, you have an idea of what data can do, what data analytics can do, and you should have a sense of what other companies are doing already. Now, in my workshops, this is the point where I resort to a thing which is called design thinking. And design thinking is basically a set of methods and tools that help you be more creative and solve problems in a more creative way. And design thinking can be used together or in order to identify data use cases. So I have written down a few design thinking methods that I think are very powerful, and these are the ones that I like to use in my workshops. And so let me just share these with you, and hopefully you can apply them for yourself. So one design thinking method is called how might we questions. And the idea is that you, for instance, frame your goals as an how might we question to get your juices going. So just ask yourself about your business a couple of how might we questions. How might we achieve goal 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? So how might we make more sales? How might we give our customers a better customer experience? How might we become internally more efficient? How might we make data-driven decisions? How might we make our customers buy more? How might we increase our productivity? And basically all of the variations in that. You'll see once you do that, it might sound trivial, but you'll see that once you do it, these how might we questions force you to think about problems in a solution-oriented way. And I'm sure a few ideas will come out of that already. The second method I'd like to use is the so-called 5 Why method. And the 5 Why method is the idea of identifying the problems you have and drilling them down to their root cause. So for instance, some of you might be facing the problem, we don't sell enough, okay? And then you start asking why, but why don't you sell enough? And then maybe one conclusion might be, we're not selling enough because we aren't able to produce more. Again, you ask why. And then you might say, we aren't able to produce more because we don't have enough employees at the moment. Again, start asking yourself why. At the end of the day, you know, once you do this 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times, you will get down to the root cause of the problem. And then you might simply chuck that in here and say, okay, how might we solve this problem? Yeah, are there any solutions that maybe possibly involve data in there, yes or no? Third method is what we talked about today already, your target persona. Simply put yourself in the shoes of your target persona and ask yourself, what would your target persona think about your business? Good. Next set of methods. Another one would be to challenge assumptions, which if you do that, there's a lot of things that come out of it as well, and you'd be surprised. So the idea of that is simply, how would things play out if you challenge all of your basic assumptions? I don't know what your assumptions might be. So this is very specific to your business and your industry. But if you're a tourism industry, a tourism company, maybe your basic assumption is that people come to Kenya because they want to see the safari and animals. And maybe this assumption is wrong. And maybe there's a lot of other things that Kenya has to offer and reasons for which people come to Kenya as well. Then one thing I also like a lot is the corner case method. And the corner case method is the idea is to ask yourself, how would a corner case deal with my problem? And I don't know if this is an urban myth or this is, if this is actually true, but it is said that the rolling suitcases, so the trolleys, were actually invented in this way. And so the story is that people who are designing a new suitcase were applying a corner case and we're thinking, okay, if I want to create the best suitcase in the market, I should ask the person who is using a suitcase to the extreme every day. And so what they did is they asked pilots and flight attendants what they think of suitcases and what would help them, what would be a great suitcase for them. And then apparently what they came up with is these sort of these tires where you can push and pull your suitcase rather than having to carry it and destroying your shoulder. So think about corner cases. And the last one I'd like to share with you right now is the cover story. Take a step back out of your business and ask yourself the question, what would a cover story about your company look like if your company was a total success or an absolute failure? So make the exercise and write down the cover story in your most famous newspaper in the New York Times about your company, saying the founder, the female founder from Bangladesh or Kenya or Nigeria or Ghana with the name XYZ has created the most successful startup, and her key strategies were XYZ. Okay, so this is also, yeah, a method which hopefully gets your juice and your thinking going. You can check out more of these tools. So these are my favorite design thinking methods. There's more methods on dt-toolbox.com and tools in English. Now, ideally, I've shown you a few data use cases that you can use already, and another ideation method or another source of where you can identify or create data use cases by simply looking at what the competition is doing and, let's say, learn from it. I don't want to say be a copycat, but learn from it. And so we've done that the last 2 weeks already. And I'll give you 10 more use cases today just to give you a bit more input and to get your juices going. Because once I'm done with that, your homework is basically going to be to brainstorm data use cases that help you identify, that help you achieve your goals. Okay, so 10 use cases in the fast forward method. Targeted marketing and business development. The idea is simply, this use case is simply visualizing in a heat map a certain KPI. And this was a use case we did with my old company for an electricity provider. And the electricity provider wanted to do a marketing campaign and expand its business, but they didn't know where in Germany to do that. So this is a map of Germany. And what we did for them is we simply visualized. So this is a descriptive analytics use case. We simply visualized what is their market share in different regions of Germany. Right? And so what they found out is that in North Germany, they're quite present already, whereas in the South, they barely have any market share. And so this helped them steer their marketing efforts and marketing campaign. Now, this is a heat map, and we visualize with a heat map the market share. You can do the same thing with, let's say, if you want to expand your business, or if you want to see where you want to target, which area you want to target next. You could also visualize, let's say, the population or the power purchasing capacities in your country per region to see, okay, where should I have my marketing campaigns? Because later when you do online marketing, you can also specify where you would like to have your ads, let's say on YouTube or Google, placed for which regions. Second one, A/B testing your website, your newsletter content, your Google ads, basically anything. The idea of A/B testing is that you try out different variations for something to see which one is most effective or which one is liked more. So let's say you have a website. We talked about this last week already. You can try out 2 different setups, A and B, let's say one with blue color and one with orange color, and see which is better to achieve the maximum conversion, for instance. Or for the click-through rate, or basically any KPI that you define. Now you can do this for your website, you can do it for newsletter content, you can do it for basically anything. A and B test your entire life. The third one is pricing optimization. The idea of that is optimize the price of your product by determining the price elasticity. And you can do that if you have sales data where you vary the price a little bit. So if you have historic data where you sell your tool for $2,000 and $1,000, you should be able to see how many more sales you've made by decreasing your price. If you don't have historic sales data with varying prices available, what you can also resort to is simply doing a small survey. So contact people who fall in your target persona profile and do a survey how much they'll be willing to pay for your product. Fourth one, push notification optimization. For those of you who have an app, so this is, I guess, more of the IT persons, the idea of this is basically okay, I think this is a copy-paste error. I'm sorry about this. But basically the idea is Optimize your push notifications. So when you send a push notification through your app, what kind of content you send, whom you send it to, maybe personalize it. This is also very related to A/B testing. A fifth one that I think everyone can do is to track your business goals. And this is a thing called OKRs, Objective Key Results, which is basically the implementation of the strategy canvas I showed you before. So internally, for all of your departments and even every person, and as your company, for your company as a whole, define objectives or goals and try to break it down into different key results you want to achieve with that, which should all be measurable and quantifiable. And once you do that, you start basically collecting data about how productive you are, how fast you achieve your goals, maybe what goals and maybe what objectives require more attention because you're behind. Yeah. 6, analyze and optimize customer journey. And this is something everyone who has a website can also do. If you have Google Analytics installed, this is a so-called Sankey diagram, which allows you to see how people behave and how people flow on your website, how many people make it from your starting page or your landing page to the about page or to any other page. And you know, a use case here is simply have a look at this and try to identify patterns and see if you can maybe place a different button or if you can change the journey in such a way that you optimize your conversion or you optimize your sales. Good. Let me skip the last 4 ones because we're running out of time. I hope that, yeah, these were a few use cases that help you get some ideas. If you want to get more ideas, and if you haven't been in the webinar last week and the week before, please do also check out the sessions there because we talked about use cases there, and I included sector-specific use cases for IT, tourism, agribusiness, and textile there. So, breath. Okay. Basically, what your homework is going to be now is to brainstorm until next week use cases like I've just shown you. Okay, you have methods to help you ideate use cases. You have this canvas that should nail down your mission and your goals. The only thing you need to do now is to basically have a workshop, invite a few of your colleagues or maybe friends, and have a brainstorming session. And in your brainstorming session, follow a few rules, which is to defer judgment above all, and go for wild ideas. So if you create a data strategy, then as the name implies, you're strategizing. And this means you're taking a step back out of your daily operations. I know that everyone is dealing with COVID now. I know that you have a million problems. I know that you have many fires to put out in your company and that the daily operations suck up your entire time and energy. But if you are to take this seriously, take a step back, change the location is a good thing. Take 2 or 3 hours and just brainstorm. Brainstorm your use cases. I know that it's an invest, but hopefully it will be worth it. The second template I'm going to upload is this one, which is basically my data use case canvas, where you can define and document your ideas. And the way to use it is, you know, do your brainstorming, and then for each of the ideas you have, write down what problem or need this use case would solve, and also try to make a mock-up of the solution. So if this is a data visualization, write down or draw a data visualization, right? So describe your use case idea here. Next, pin down the benefits of what this use case would bring. Okay, so what are the benefits in terms of monetary, maybe time efficiency gains, maybe they're non-tangible, but write down your benefits. Also, next, think about the challenges that you might face when you're implementing this use case. This is just meant to get you going and think about the problems there might also be. Next, for every use case that you have, indicate what type of use case it is. And watch the second webinar for this. Is this a descriptive or predictive or diagnostic use case? Or is it just an enabler, which could be simply starting to collect data about something? Also, write down what the size of this use case would be in terms of when you implement it, and how you would measure the success of this use case. So if you implement this use case in your company, how would you measure the success of it? Okay, this is your KPI, your key performance indicator. This is quite a big template, so bear with me for a second. On the left side, we continue with giving your data use case some sort of ID. So you might just call it use case number 3. Also try to put it in terms of clusters, because once you do this brainstorm, you'll see that you'll come up with a lot of ideas which fall into different areas of your business. So a cluster might be your website, or it might be marketing, it might be sales, it might be internal operations, it might be concerning your product 1, it might be, you name it, right? But a cluster that everyone is going to have is for sure going to be marketing, is going to be sales, and is going to be website. So specify what cluster this use case falls into. Owner is simply who's responsible. If you're a team, write down who's responsible for managing and continuing this use case, and write down related use cases. Remember from the slide I've shown you from me before, the use cases of tracking keywords and then analyzing whether something has an effect on it. Sorry, I had a button. Were related. So write down what precursors are of the use case and what potential successes in terms of other use cases could be. And lastly, try to indicate how big the impact on your company would be, or for a specific goal, if you are to implement this use case. This might be a bit much. Let me give you an example. So this use case that I've identified for myself is track SEO rankings for crucial keywords. This is what we talked about before already. The problem I'm trying to solve here is that we don't know, or I don't know how good my website is designed in terms of SEO and how I'm ranking for crucial keywords. For instance, data consultant in Germany or data strategy workshop in Germany. The solution is to simply create a list of relevant keywords and track their ranking over time. So a mock-up, or how this would look like, is something like this. The benefits I would gain from that is that I understand how good my website is, and I understand how visitors come to my website. A challenge might be that Google brings out an update of its PageRank algorithm, which affects this ranking. And the type of this use case is it's descriptive, because it's simply showing me what my ranking looks like at a given day for a certain keyword. So there's nothing predictive or fancy about it. The size is small, because at the end of the day, and we'll talk about this next week, this is done in 5 minutes with the right tool. And the KPI I could use to measure whether this use case helps me actually is, at the end of the day, I want to increase my website visits, right? So this is in the cluster website and marketing. I've given this use case the ID number 1, and it has a successor, which is number 2, which is improve my SEO by implementing a certain SEO measure, and hopefully with that improve my rankings and analyze whether this measure had an impact. And the contribution for me would be pretty high, because it helps me achieve my marketing goal of reaching 1,000 visitors per month. The idea of your homework is that by next week, before we get into creating a concrete roadmap and implementing some of these things, the idea is that by next week, or as soon as possible, you will have a list of use cases like this. So notice also how in a data strategy, we're basically being data driven, because essentially what you're doing is you're creating a list or database of use cases, of data use cases that you can implement in your business. And next week, we're going to talk about how, once you have this list, you can prioritize and see which of these data use cases to implement first. Okay, but the idea is brainstorm, create this list of your use cases with their IDs, with their names, with the cluster they're in, who's the owner, what type of use case it is, what size this use case would have if you wanted to implement it, and what the impact would be on your business on a scale from 0 to 5. Okay, the hour is over. This is also where I'm going to stop for today. Let me just do a quick recap before we open the floor for questions. So we have today talked about what a data strategy is, which is nothing else than identifying problems or solutions or areas in your business where you can use data to achieve your goals. To devise a data strategy, you have to first define what your goals are in the first place, and your goals will depend on your mission, will depend on your why. So if you break down your why into different goals, into different whats, then these are basically your goals. What I want you to do until next week is step 2, to brainstorm and identify use cases. So write down your mission, break it down into goals, and then think about these goals with the design thinking methods I've given you today. Do this with your colleagues or alone, but do take a step back out of your operations, out of your daily operations, and just give it an hour or 2 to brainstorm use cases. You have input from today, hopefully. You also have a few other use cases from last week and the week before. And I hope this is enough input to get you going and start with your data strategy and start identifying use cases. What we're going to do next week is once you have this list, we're going to see how we can prioritize it and how we can pick out of the potentially 20, 30, 40 use cases that you're going to identify and brainstorm, how to pick the right one and with which one to start. So there's no right or wrong, but as I've just mentioned, when I do this with my clients and we're brainstorming 5, 6 people, then it's not unusual for us to end up with 30, 40 use cases. So I hope that you will identify at least as many. I will stop here for now. And Edison, I'll give the floor to you for questions.
Hi, thank you, Michael. It's been a great session. I think it's quite bite-sized and easily to understand for everyone. And if you do not, I really encourage everyone to revisit the past 3 sessions, or actually 4, including this one. I'm going to launch the poll during the Q&A session. Okay, it seems like my poll is not working. All right, that's okay. Okay, I have a question from Rachel Duke. And I think this pertains to something earlier on in the webinar. Does it mean that all adverts and advertisements will be visible to the underlisted target persona?
Right, I think you're referring to Google Ads. And I'm not an expert on Google Ads, but basically the way it works is that you can make an advertisement for certain keywords. So let's say for me, I would like to, my target persona are people who are confused with data and AI, and my target persona are people who want to have a data strategy workshop. So these persons will likely into Google type into something like, I want to book a data strategy workshop. Now I, as Michael, can put Google Ads for this specific keyword. So I can specify in Google that whenever someone types this in, I want to appear as Google Ads on the first place, and I have to pay, I don't know, €2 per click. And if I'm not mistaken, but don't take my word for 100%, is that I can also specify other criteria of my target persona. So I can specify, I want this ad only to be displayed if someone types in the keyword in Berlin, and if this person has an age between 30 and 40 and is female. Because Google has this sort of information about some of its customers. So I can basically cater and nail down and drill down my ad to really target my dream customer and my target persona. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you, Michael. Do we have, okay, are heat maps still relevant on the website?
Yeah, heat maps are fantastic. Heat maps are great on your website or really on anywhere else because, I mean, a picture says more than 1,000 words. And if you visualize things whether it's a heat map or something else, it's just extremely powerful and helps people understand things, and it's a powerful message. So if you on your website, Stella, can include a heat map for your customers, or if you have a heat map for your internal operations to see where your main website visitors come from, this is very informative because you can get a lot of information nicely put and very easily digestible. So yeah, heat maps are still relevant today.
Could you share a little bit on how, for those who do not know specifically what a heat map is, how can they access it or apply it to their businesses?
Okay, so to create a heat map, you need to use a data visualization tool. And I encourage you to look into the webinar of 2 weeks ago, where we quickly talk about these tools. The idea is that you have a map of, for instance, a country or of your city or of the world, and you break it down into smaller entities. So you would break down Germany to the different districts. And for each district, you visualize in a color code, for instance, how many people there live. And so the more people there live, the darker the color, for instance. Now, it would go too deep to go into the specifics on how you do that for each of the tools. But one thing everyone can do is to check out their Google Analytics, because they provide a heat map to see where your customers come from, at what time they log onto your website, which is all visualized there in heat maps.
Okay, thank you. Another question from Doris. Do we need to constantly edit the contents on our websites and social media handles to access or measure the effect of keywords on visitors and customers?
Okay, that's a good question. So SEO in Google in a nutshell is that Google has a machine, a bot, which is walking around all of the web pages there are in the world, which is, they stopped releasing the numbers, but in 2017, the last time they released the numbers on how many websites there are in the world was 1.7 trillion. And so they have a bot which goes around and checks out every website. Once it has done that, it's feeding it into a system with which the page ranking will be determined. Okay. Now, if you just have your website static and you don't change anything, every time the bot comes around, it will just register your website as it was last week. And so your ranking, your score by yourself, your absolute score will not change, but your score relative to your competition might change. So if your competition does certain measurement to improve its rankings, then you will lose out on it. And so the answer is, if you have a good ranking for the keywords you like already, then don't touch your website. Don't change a thing, because you don't want to risk being downgraded again. If you have not so good rankings and you would like to improve, then it's time to change things. This could be content, backlinks, you name it. What you want to look at is Google SEO measurements. And then you'll see what you can change on your website.
Thank you, Michael. The next question is quite interesting. Is data strategy same as digital strategy?
That's an
And
interesting
maybe
question.
while you're at it, you can also demystify digital marketing and then the various content marketing, etc.,
Okay.
etc., if you could. Thank
Okay.
you.
I think that's two different questions. So let me first say digital strategy. The answer is they're very closely related, but they're not the same. So data strategy, the idea is to identify those situations in your business where you can use data. And digital strategy, in my understanding, is a bit broader, and you identify those areas or problems where a digitalization would already help you with your business goals, rather than data, because they're not really the same, right? They're very closely related, because once you have digitalized your business, so actually a digital strategy, I guess, should precede your data strategy. Once you have digitalized some areas of your business, this is where you typically can start collecting data, or where you have data already. And then you can basically develop your data strategy. So I guess digital strategy really only means in your business, where can you digitalize processes or where can you digitize certain things you have in your business? So they're a bit different. Now, concerning your question, Edison, digital marketing and online marketing, these are, it's a bit different. So digitalizing your business is broader than, let me put it this way, online marketing and digital marketing is one subcategory of digitalizing your business. And the idea is to tap into this new marketing channel, which is the internet and which is the online world, rather than making marketing in analog in the tram or in the subway somewhere. This is basically the idea of digital and online marketing. Use Google ads, use Facebook ads, and pimp your website so that you appear higher on Google rankings. This is all within the area of online and digital marketing, which is a very vast field. I mean, I'm not an expert in this, but in a nutshell, I think that's basically what it breaks down to.
Thank you, Michael. Yes, I think because many people are very confused by digital marketing and, there are so many subcomponents to what it is. And they encompass various strategies that one can employ, right? There could be content marketing through blogging, social media marketing and such. We have a question from Deborah. Michael, you said that we should start by digitalizing our data, but what are the basic software and applications that we use as starters?
That's an excellent question. So it's great that you raised this, Deborah. I should correct myself and I should say you should start digitalizing your business to start creating data. Now, what are the basic softwares and applications that you can use as starters? This is basically the question of, okay, what kind of data should I collect? How should I collect it? Now, we will get into this more next week, but basically the answer is that there's no one size fits all solution. And it really depends from case to case. And the answer will be, it depends. And on what will it depend? It will depend on your data strategy and on your data use case. So if you have your why, and if you've broken it down into goals, and if you've broken down your goals into different data use cases, then next week we're going to see how you can prioritize use cases, and you can say, hey, I want to implement data use case number 5, which is about tracking my SEO rankings. Once you have that, then you can get to the stage where we ask, okay, how can I do that and what software should I use? In this case, there's software that I can tell you to track your SEO rankings. But the answer, what tools you should use and what kind of data you collect, always is answered by the data use case and what you want to do with it. Because what you want to do will automatically answer how you should go about it. And this in turn will depend on your goals and on your mission. So yeah, do join next week, Deborah, and I hope that things will become a bit clearer then.
Thank you, Michael. I will take 2 more questions. The second last one is, does incorporating a search button on the website improve the ranking of the website?
That's a good question. The answer is, when the Google bot goes around the internet and checks out your website and makes an audit of your website and sees how much it likes it, there are, I think, 190 factors it takes into account. Okay, so some factors are how large is the content on your website? What's the keyword density? How much time do people spend on average on your website? What is your URL? Do you have an do you have an SSL certificate, etc.? So there's literally 190 factors. Now, whether a search button on a website improves your ranking, frankly, I don't know from the top of my head, but I would assume yes, because I think it influences the key factors of these 190 factors that Google takes into account in a positive way. People will usually have a better user experience. They will likely spend more time. And I guess Google itself likes just if you have a search button. I don't know for sure. You would have to check it and see if you can find the answers on the internet. Though I will say that Google obviously is not releasing the 190 factors it bases its rankings on, because that's basically their main USP, their main unique selling point, and that's basically their company. But you can find sources which investigate this, and you should find sources on the internet. As a general guideline for your SEO and improving your website, make it nice for your customers and make it nice for your visitors and make it relevant for your visitors. Because the main goal of Google is that people use Google, and people will use Google if it gives you relevant results. And so Google will show the most relevant results on top. And basically the major guideline is make your website relevant for a certain keyword or for your target client. And this is basically the answer. But you know, SEO and Google organic search and optimizing your website is a very, very, very big area. So if you do want to get into it, just Google for online courses on this, and there's many resources you can find.
Thank you, Michael. The last question goes to Doris. What can we do to reduce the bounce rates on our website?
That's an excellent question. So bounce rate, for everyone who doesn't know, is if I type in data strategy workshop and my website appears first on the rankings, and someone clicks on it and then leaves the web page again instead of clicking on another subpage on my website, then this is a bounce. So it's a website visit and directly going off of it. And you know, this is a good question, and it's an art, Doris, to reduce your bounce rate, which is, by the way, one of the key factors that Google also takes into account when doing its rankings. You know, you have basically your first use case right there, which is A and B test. Try out different setups of your website. Try to engage your customers more. Include a pop-up button, include a chatbot, change the heading, change the language, change the picture, include other buttons, try out different colors, A and B test out of it and see which one reduces your bounce rate and which one is the best in terms of optimizing, so lowering your bounce rate.
So for those who don't know, then I would assume you would do the A/B testing, you know, by changing all the moving parts, you know, different components and indicators, and then you go back to your Google Analytics, right? And look at the bounce rate.
Exactly. And use, like last week, use Google Optimize, because you can basically implement it there very easily. Yes.
Okay, sounds great. Yeah, we can see that how this webinar on data strategy really is so I would say interlinked with digital marketing strategies and SEO optimization. So hopefully in the future we get Michael to you know, guide us in more on this aspect. But thank you so much, Michael, for this session. We have a final one next week. Again, apologies for the time. We had sent out an incorrect hyperlink and the time zones. Just make sure that for next session, it will be also on Wednesday on the, wait, I don't know if off my head. I think it's on the 26th of August, also at the same time as today. So look forward to meeting everyone there. And yeah, have a great week, everyone. And thank you
Yeah.
for your participation.
Yes, thanks for your participation. I hope it was helpful. Good luck with your data strategy start, and then next week we can continue. And I hope to see many of you there.
Yeah, I really encourage everyone. So Michael, I assume that you'll be sending me the canvas,
Yes.
which I will be sharing with everyone. And really, the amount of effort you put into brainstorming will determine how well you follow the next session, right? Because you
Yes.
actually have concrete things to look at. Okay, so I will leave all of you, and thank you, Michael, once again, and see you all on the 26th of August at the same time.
All right.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a
Bye.
great week. Bye.